Life 1.2 million years ago unfolded in a world both harsh and astonishingly intricate. Early humans, our distant ancestors, lived in landscapes that demanded constant ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience. Africa's savannas, river valleys, and scattered woodlands were alive with the raw rhythms of survival. Predators lurked in every shadow, from swift leopards to massive saber-toothed cats, while herbivores roamed in cautious herds, shaping the land with their migrations. Humans were small players in this vast stage, yet they possessed one remarkable advantage: the ability to think beyond immediate survival. They innovated, observed, and experimented in ways that shaped not only their lives, but the very fabric of culture itself. In these ancient landscapes, death was never far away. Life expectancy was short, dangers were constant, and the harshness of nature was a daily teacher. Yet, amidst this struggle, early humans displayed an extraordinary awareness of mortality. Archaeological evidence suggests that they were not content to simply discard their dead. Instead, they engaged in careful, deliberate practices that would later evolve into the rituals and spiritual observances familiar in much later civilizations. These practices were more than superstition. They were reflections of cognitive development, social cohesion, and the recognition of an existence beyond immediate perception. The earliest signs of deliberate handling of the dead are subtle yet profound. Fossilized remains from sites across East Africa show that bodies were sometimes placed in specific positions, protected from scavengers, and occasionally accompanied by tools or personal objects. Unlike animals, which were left to decay naturally, these humans seemed to understand instinctively that the dead could be treated differently from the living. This awareness may have arisen from observation, watching the body decompose, witnessing its fragility, and connecting these events to the cycles of life surrounding them. Mummification, in its earliest form, was a radical extension of this awareness. While the precise techniques used by humans 1.2 million years ago remain partially speculative, modern paleontology and ethnographic analogies allow us to reconstruct plausible scenarios. The process would have involved meticulous care, keen observation, and experimentation with natural materials. Early humans discovered that certain substances could preserve flesh, slow decay, and even maintain recognizable features for extended periods. Plants with tannins, naturally drying soils, and mineral-rich sediments were all tools in this early mortuary toolkit. These proto-mummification practices were not uniform or ceremonial in the way Egyptian mummification would later become. Instead, they were functional, experimental, and highly localized. In one site, bodies may have been placed atop dry sand, exposed to the sun and wind, effectively desiccating the flesh while protecting it from insects and predators. In another, mineral-rich clays may have been used to wrap or encase the body, creating a protective barrier that resisted decomposition. The choice of method likely depended on environmental conditions, available materials, and perhaps even the social importance of the deceased. Remarkably, these practices demonstrate an early grasp of cause and effect. Humans realized that by interacting with their environment in specific ways, they could manipulate natural processes to achieve desired outcomes. They were, in essence, early scientists experimenting with preservation long before chemical formulas and laboratory techniques existed. This shows not only intelligence, but the emergence of abstract thought, the ability to plan, hypothesize, and test. A mummified body was more than a preserved corpse. It was evidence of human ingenuity, a tangible record of knowledge applied in a social context. The social implications of these practices were equally profound. Caring for the dead required cooperation, communication, and shared effort. Preparing a body for preservation was not a solitary task. Families, clans, or small bands likely participated collectively, gathering resources, preparing materials, and overseeing the process. These activities strengthened social bonds, reinforced hierarchies, and perhaps even created early forms of ritual behavior. In observing and participating in the care of the dead, humans were asserting shared values, memory, and continuity across generations. Material evidence supports this interpretation. Fossils and burial sites show careful positioning of bodies, placement of hands and limbs, and sometimes even evidence of coverings or wrappings. Plant fibers, resinous substances, and mud coatings indicate that these early humans understood how to use natural compounds to slow decomposition. While we cannot know their exact intentions, it is plausible that they recognized a distinction between the living and the dead, and perhaps even conceived of a lingering presence or memory of the deceased. One of the most striking aspects of these mummification practices is their adaptability. Early humans did not rely on a single method. Instead, they experimented with a combination of sun, wind, clay, and plant matter. In arid regions, desiccation by exposure to sunlight was likely the most effective, producing naturally preserved bodies with remarkable detail. In wetter environments, clay or mud could create anaerobic conditions that slowed bacterial action. Plants rich in tannins, resin, or other antimicrobial compounds were applied in some cases, suggesting empirical knowledge of natural preservatives. Over time, these experiments would refine themselves into more consistent techniques, laying the groundwork for more elaborate mortuary practices in later millennia. The cognitive dimension of mummification is equally important. By preserving the dead, humans were engaging with concepts of permanence, temporality, and identity. They were confronting the inevitability of death while simultaneously asserting human control over nature's processes. This reflects an early form of symbolic thinking, the ability to represent, interpret, and manipulate concepts that are not immediately tangible. Mummification was therefore both practical and philosophical. It preserved not only flesh, but memory, and in doing so, it marked a profound step in the evolution of consciousness. Moreover, these practices were intertwined with the natural environment. Early humans were keen observers of ecological processes, understanding how climate, soil, and vegetation could influence preservation. They exploited these variables to achieve desired outcomes, creating a dialogue between culture and environment. The river valleys, floodplains, and caves of 1.2 million years ago were laboratories for experimentation, where humans tested materials, locations, and methods. The results of these experiments were preserved in stone, soil, and organic remains, providing a window into early human ingenuity and resilience. Interestingly, some of the preserved remains show evidence of care extending beyond the immediate act of preservation. Tools and objects placed near the deceased suggest an emerging recognition of social identity and personal belongings. These objects were more than practical items. They were extensions of the individual, tokens of memory, and possibly instruments intended to accompany the dead into an uncertain afterlife. The placement of these objects indicates foresight, planning, and an understanding of social symbolism. Humans were creating a narrative around death, turning it into an act that communicated meaning, reinforced bonds, and articulated collective memory. Each mummified body was not only a preserved corpse, but a tangible lesson in social structure, environmental manipulation, and cognitive capacity. Scientific analysis of these early mummification sites continues to reveal astonishing insights. Isotopic studies of plant residues, microscopic examination of clay coatings, and fossilized tissue analysis provide evidence of intentional preservation strategies. These findings show that early humans were actively selecting materials based on their preservative qualities, demonstrating empirical knowledge of chemistry and biology long before such concepts existed in formal science. It is a testament to the human capacity for observation, experimentation, and innovation. The broader ecological context is also critical. Life 1.2 million years ago was dynamic, competitive, and often unpredictable. Predators roamed, climate shifted, and landscapes transformed. In this context, mummification was not a mere curiosity. It was a response to existential pressures. It allowed humans to assert control in a world of uncertainty, to honor memory, and to establish a sense of continuity amidst chaos. By manipulating natural processes, they created a bridge between life and death, survival and memory, matter and meaning. Equally fascinating is the interplay between technology and cognition. Early humans were not only shaping their environment to preserve bodies, they were also refining tools and techniques in the process. Stones were shaped to cut, scrape, and carve. Plants were processed to extract preservative compounds, and soils were selected and manipulated to optimize drying or protective layering. These activities demonstrate sophisticated planning, problem-solving, and the ability to integrate multiple streams of knowledge into a coherent strategy. Mummification was therefore both an endpoint and a catalyst. It preserved life in death while driving innovation in the living. Cultural continuity is another remarkable outcome. The very act of caring for the dead created traditions, even informal. Knowledge of preservation methods, effective materials, and optimal locations would have been transmitted orally, through observation, and via imitation.